Yes! Welcome into Sports Betting Insight today. Weekend preview edition. Here we are, Pauly and Teddy. 2-0 yesterday with the play of the day. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books coming up. And every Friday we go rapid fire the four marquee games of the NFL, highlighted by NFC Championship rematch as they open up Mercedes-Benz Sunday night with Green Bay and Atlanta. Let's start with the play of the day. One of them yesterday. Don't let anybody tell you this was a bad beat, because even our stats guy didn't have this, that the New Mexico backup also had a concussion. So when Jordan, the starting quarterback, left with a concussion, they were stuck with the third-string QB who can't really run the triple option, and Boise couldn't do anything on offense. Finally, they took advantage of great field position, but in through the back door, New Mexico does score with about a minute left as they get a PI call. 28-14, Boise wins, doesn't cover.
Yeah, and of course, it wasn't a true bad beat by no semblance of imagine. I mean, Boise wasn't a right side, New Mexico wasn't a right side, but Boise led by 3 touchdowns against a third-string quarterback at home in the fourth quarter against an offense that hadn't done anything, really hadn't done anything all night. And then what happened? Lobos have time for one last drive. And on that last drive, it's worth noting, they never even saw a third down. It was just bang, 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 right down the field into the end zone. So tough beat if you had Boise. Yeah, New Mexico. Well, you're on the right side of, at best, a spotty play. We'll take it.
Yes, and that was the first winner. Here's the other one. Bad bet. Under, though. Never a sweat with the Bengals and the Texans, but the Bengals opened 3, steamed up to 6, some buyback down to 5.5. Watson with the long touchdown run. And Dalton, they said it on the broadcast, first team since 1939 to go first 2 games at home without scoring a touchdown. It's a horror show, Teddy.
Yeah, and look, we got the tweet from ESPN Stats and Info right here showing that it hasn't happened in the NFL. And whatever, you're starting to talk about 1939 in the NFL. To me, that means it's never happened before. 1939 the NFL, not a whole lot like what we see today. Let's just put it that way. But the legend of Deshaun Watson grows. That was a heck of a touchdown run before halftime. Of course, the only touchdown scored in the entire game. But it's worth noting here, everyone's saying don't overreact to week 1. Don't overreact to week 1. Important to note, don't underreact to week 1 either. Teams with bad offensive lines on paper coming into the season and bad offensive lines in week 1 aren't likely to suddenly have good offensive lines in week 2. That was certainly the case with Cincinnati last night, dominated at the point of attack for the second straight week on the offensive side of the football.
All right, here's a bad beat, and it surprised me, a 50-cent move against the Indians. Junis and the Royals opened plus 215, closed plus $1.65. They led 2-1 in the ninth, 2 outs down to their final strike. But Lindor with the double sent it to extras. Bruce with the walk-off, 22 wins in a row for the Indians. Tomlin pitched well, so did Junis, and Indians get the come-from-behind win.
Yeah, I mean, what do we call this one? We call it a bad beat? We call it a bad bet? I would personally call it more of a bad beat than a bad bet. Casey was the right side in that game. 50-cent move towards the Royals. The markets went nuts betting against Cleveland last night. All wise guy money, obviously, not the public involved in that one. But Francisco Lindor, what does he have now? An extra base hit in 8 straight games, including the game-tying 2-out double in the ninth. Cleveland wins in extras. Yeah, tough beat, bad bet, whatever you want to call it. Bottom line is Cleveland wins again.
Here's another one. This was due to the lineups. No Murphy, no Zimmerman for the Nationals. Braves plus 165, closed a 120 dog. Roark pitched well. Nats get the win 5-2.
Yeah, good result for the house in this one. It was all lineups. The money, flowed on Atlanta once Dusty Baker announced he was resting several key starters in preparation for the series against the Dodgers that start tonight. But all the money came on Atlanta. Atlanta didn't do a whole lot. After dominating the first 2 games, it was Washington who dominated the third meeting. Bad bet, all that Atlanta money.
Bad for the books, 2 totals. Steam here. Yankees, Orioles 9 up to 10.5. 10.5 in some spots, 13-5 win for the Yankees. Judge hits 2 home runs. The Sanchino hits another one, a 6-run first for New York. Orioles have lost 7 of 8. And the Mariners Rangers from 10 all the way up to 11.5. 10-4 final. Cashner had nothing.
Yeah, and in both these games, we saw heavy steam on the over. The Yankees, Orioles, no sweat there. They got the 10 by the third inning of that one. Wade Miley faced 7 batters, only got 1 out. The other 6 all got hits and scored. And boy, the markets were really looking to fade Andrew Cashner. Look, his overall numbers are decent, 9-9, 3.19 heading into last night's game. And they were also looking to fade Felix Hernandez. They were right. Cashner got rocked. King Felix only lasted 54 pitches. And Nelson Cruz with the big night, a home run and 2 doubles in that 10-4 victory that flew over the total.
NFL in a second. NHL right around the corner. October 6th, the Vegas Golden Knights open their season against Dallas on the road. The Westgate announced they will have in-play wagering in every single game at the end of each intermission. And this is big. The NHL did not request for the Vegas Golden Knights games to be removed from Nevada's sports books. You can bet on the local team. Great news here. No one really cares about the NHL. You can get more people interested, and bettors like to watch all the games.
And here's the key, Pauly. You can't just, it's not just you can bet on the NHL. You can bet on the NHL in the arena. Okay. Yeah. The NHL has basically said, we're okay with gambling on our product. With the move to Vegas and with the fact that they had 30 days before the season started to go to the gaming commission and request a special exemption. They chose not to do so. Just one more sign how the major sports leagues are all accepting gambling. This is real. Here's a quote from Dr. Tony Alamo, the Nevada Gaming Commission chairman. Quote, Nevada is the safest place on the planet to place a bet on any sport. I think the NHL sees that and appreciates that. And, moving forward, it's a huge deal. The fact that this went without a whisper is a huge deal, and speaks volumes about what's going on with all the leagues still fighting in the Supreme Court against New Jersey, but all of them making plans through the back door in case the Supreme Court rules otherwise.
Quickly, pros versus Joes, NFL Week 2. Professional money on the Titans. I agree with it. Professional money on the Chiefs at home against Philly. That surprises me. Vikings taking money. They were getting a touchdown at Pittsburgh. They're betting on Jay Cutler. Careful there. Worst quarterback ATS the last 10 years. And their Buccaneers are taking money at home against the Bears. As the Bears, who's Glenn going to throw the ball to?
Well, that's just it. I mean, the Bucs money, of all of those, you were surprised by the KC money. I was surprised by the Bucs money until you really start to look at that Bears injury report. It is brutal. Their top 3 wide receivers are gone, out. So you have a bad quarterback facing a team that knows him pretty well, and none of his top receivers available. The Chicago Bears arguably have the worst injury situation in the entire NFL right now. That's certainly not good news for John Fox and company moving forward.
I don't know what the public's doing here with Seattle up to 14 in some spots. Good luck with that offensive line. They're also betting the Cardinals. That's a good move if it's Tolzien, I guess. Good luck with Carson Palmer, who was horrific Week 1. Raiders, I agree with that. Again, you can't get me to go to the window and take the Jets. Raiders taking money. Cowboys on the road at Denver, and the Patriots. Belichick and Brady dynamite off a loss.
Yeah, and one thing that we try to do every week here on SportsBit is highlight who do the pros like, who do the Joes like. Probably going to be a regular segment here on Fridays. We saw who the pros are betting. The Joes, you already know who they're betting. The public never saw a 2-touchdown favorite they didn't like. They didn't see it. There aren't many touchdown road favorites that they don't like either. All chalk for the recreational bettor. No surprise. And if you notice, all of them with the exception, well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of them didn't cover. But in general, you're going to see a lot of teams that covered the last week get support from the Joes when it comes to this particular segment each Friday. Look all over the chalk, especially the big chalk, come Sunday.
Big game breakdown up next. 4 good games. And we start with the Patriots and the Saints and the Vikings and the Steelers on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SPRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SPR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Back on SportsBit, Pauly and Teddy, Betting Insight today. Time for Big Game Breakdown. Always sponsored and powered by Bet Online. Exceptional customer service, strong promotions, every type of wager we're looking for out there. Patriots 56 at New Orleans. New England 42-6 off a loss since 2004. Mercy. New Orleans has never been a 6-point dog at home or more in the Breeze era. It began in 2006. New look for the Patriots on offense. Last year, Brady was throwing to Bennett. He went to Green Bay, throwing to Edelman. He's out for the year. Mitchell, who's on IR, and Amendola, who's got in the concussion protocol and also has a bad knee. Those four combined to catch 208 passes. Now it's Cooks and Dorsett. The newcomers, Cooks had 3 for 88 against the Chiefs. Dorsett, 18 plays, didn't have a catch. And they also, this is under the radar, Teddy, they brought 4 wide receivers in that they worked out during the week.
Yeah, and the guys that they're bringing in, they brought in Jordan Payton from UCLA, Gabe Marks from Washington State, Marcus Wilson from Washington State, Jeremy Ross from Cal. You know, they're trying to find some possession guys because they've got a couple of speed guys in Cooks and Dorsett. We said it last week, right here on Sports. We don't want to pat yourself on the back too much, but the bottom line is if you're watching this show, you're getting good information before everyone else has it. What did we say last week? The Patriots offense is going to be a work in progress. This is not a seamless transition with Brady losing all of his receivers and changing the focal point of the offense from dink and dunk to more aggressive downfield. Look, last week, 30% of Brady's pass attempts went more than 20 yards downfield against the Chiefs. Last year, that was 11% for the season. So significant difference between what New England's trying to do offensively right now compared to what they've been doing in recent seasons. It's going to take some time. And of course, you talk about this point spread. It's historical in the sense that we have never, in the 11 years that Drew Brees has been in New Orleans, we have never seen the Saints at +6 or higher at home. This is the time, I guess. We'll see if they stand out. Of course, we got a quote from Brady, quote, "Obviously, what we did the other night is not good enough by any means in any particular phase of the game at any position. There's not a bunch of easy plays out there. There's no magic play you can call. You've just got to make no excuse and go make the play. We're all going to be challenged with that opportunity." What Brady's saying between the lines there, it's going to take some time, just as we're telling you.
Although the Saints defense off to a bad start, Sam Bradford was terrific. It was actually, Bradford's pretty good. We'll talk about that coming up in a second. But they allowed 470 yards, 7.5 yards per play. They had 1 sack and no turnovers. Peyton, quote, "Not a good tape. I thought defensively we struggled in coverage at times. For the early portion of the game, the penalties hurt in the first series. As the game wore on, I thought the explosive plays hurt us. There were some mental errors, poor decisions overall, not good enough." Kenny Vaccaro, like I said, I've been this optimistic about a defense in a long time. I really believe that. I think we'll bounce back. I don't know what it was. We made so much progression in the preseason, how good the defense played in camp, how we match up against the offense, we take a step back, and it really hurts. Now, what are they going to do at running back? Adrian Peterson today, it's like I didn't sign up for this where I was only on the field for 9 plays. He split carries with Kamara, Ingram, and AP. If I'm the Saints, I'm calling Arizona trying to make a trade. Last thing we saw, Peterson's yelling at Peyton on the sidelines.
Yeah, and look, people getting... I yell at you on the sidelines of the show, Paulie. You yell at me. It happens all the time. When people work together, sometimes you get frustrated and start yelling. I don't worry as much about that as I worry about the Saints defense, because that to me was a very interesting quote that you read from Kenny Vaccaro. All right, this is Saints defense. They spent a ton of money and a ton of effort and a ton of draft picks trying to make that defense better in the offseason. And in the preseason, they looked better. Legitimately. And they say, it's a preseason, don't worry too much. And they go out week 1 and they get lit up to the tune of 7.5 yards per play and no turnovers. Here's Vaccaro saying, "I haven't been this optimistic about a defense in a long time. I think we'll bounce back. Here's a Patriots offense that's going to go through some growing pains." Just saying, maybe the Saints might be a little bit liver here than some people are giving them credit for.
Talked to a beat reporter on the show this week. He says it's going to be a shootout and the game's going to go over. Game number 2, live odds bet online, Vikings and the Steelers. Vikings money, Pittsburgh at home, 5.5, 45.5 the total. Part of the New Orleans issue from Monday night, the Vikings were good. Shouldn't be a shock, though. It is to Teddy, but our stats guys all over it. Sam Bradford was great in 2016. He didn't have any help. Offensive line was terrible, and his weapons were hurt. He was number 6 last year in passer rating. And look at this graphic. Long pass accuracy. That's passes more than 15 yards down the field. Ryan, number 1. Luck, Breeze, Brady, no surprise. Boom! Look who's number 4. Sam Bradford. And he tore apart New Orleans Monday night. Thielen had a big game. Diggs as well. Maybe the best game I've seen Bradford play. Remember, I think he was 27 or 32. Dalvin Cook had 2 drops in that game as well. And also Pat Shurmur, because Norv Turner quit last year in the middle of the season as the OC. So they had a full camp with Shurmur, and he said, quote, the offensive coordinator has to be able to communicate with the quarterback on a daily basis. It's got to be fluid. I like this. Here's why we're doing this. It's a good way to get the ball to this guy. We need to run the ball here. Maybe you could check out of this. Those types of conversations can really only be had with guys that trust one another. And I trust Sam and his judgment. And that's a money quote. Go get him, Sam.
It sure is. And again, if you could have probably given me 20 guesses. You say, all right, the 5 best passers in the NFL at long pass accuracy this year, last year. Ryan, Luck, Breeze, Brady. And then say, okay, who's the 5th guy? You could have given me 20. I wouldn't have had Sam Bradford on that list. No question. But what happened on Monday night turned my head. Because this is Sam Bradford. Remember, he was with the Rams and playing behind a horrific offensive line in St. Louis. And then he got traded in the offseason and missed part of the offseason in Philadelphia. And then got traded again from the Eagles at the beginning of training camp. He didn't go through a training camp in Minnesota. This is the first time in years that Sam Bradford has had a full offseason with the same team and the same coordinator and the same offense. And guess what? It showed in week 1. Sam Bradford was as good as I've ever seen him. Let's see him do it again on the road this week against the Steelers.
While the Steelers struggled on offense, Antonio Brown saved them. We had 11 catches for 182 yards, but the other 43 snaps produced 108 yards. They couldn't run the ball. And penalties are a big issue. Why? They couldn't run the ball because they were stuck in second and long the entire game. 13 penalties for 144 yards, most of them on offense. Tomlin, why Bell, 10 carries for 32 yards, was not effective. Quote, you can write whatever story you want to write about him missing preseason, all of that. The bottom line is we got highly penalized, and it put us behind the chains and minimized the running game. Write that, because that's what happened. The defense played well, and T.J. Watt looks like his brother out there. He's the real deal.
Oh, my God, T.J. Watt was insane. And, of course, this is a Steelers team that spent a ton of draft capital on their linebacking core in recent years, where they have 4 linebackers drafted in the first round over the last 5 years. The Jarvin Jones didn't work out. You know, we've seen signs from Ryan Shazier and Bud Dupree, but you might say the jury's still out on those guys. But, you know, T.J. Watt, what do you have, 2 sacks and an interception against the Browns? If he's anything like the force that his brother has been with the Texans, the Steelers' defense may be a notch or 2 better than some people expect.
Up next, Dallas and Denver in the Sunday night game. Rematch of the NFC title game, Green Bay and Atlanta on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
We close it out on SportsBet. Weekend preview edition. 2 down, 2 to go. Great slate of games coming up on Sunday. Late game, Cowboys and the Broncos. Dallas is 2 on the road, 42.5 the total. Who knows what's going to happen, but it looks like Elliott could be there for much of the season, or at least half the season. We'll see what the other ruling is going to be about what the judge in Texas decided to do. In any event, Elliott had 24 for 104 on the ground against the Giants, and he had 5 receptions for 36 yards. The Denver defense struggled last year against the run. They shut down Gordon Monday night, but that's cause for concern. And Dallas has a lot of weapons, and they've been great. Remember, we'll throw out the Philadelphia game, Week 17. 6-1 on the road last year, straight up. 1 at Lambeau, 1 at Pittsburgh, Teddy.
Yeah, 5-1-1 against the spread in those ball games. And as you mentioned, that include outright underdog wins at the Packers and at the Steelers. And that had a lot to do with the fact that their ground game was so successful. You know, when you have a young quarterback like Dak Prescott, and you're bringing them on the road in a hostile environment, you need to be able to run the football. That's exactly what Dallas did last week at home against the Giants. Tough defense. They struggled a little bit in the red zone in that contest, but the bottom line is Elliott was able to move the football on the ground. And for the entire Cowboys franchise, it's like a sigh of relief, because there's a decent chance that Zeke Elliott's going to be able to play the entire season this year, which obviously makes Dallas that much better, even though from a powering adjustment, it's not a huge adjustment for me. But you talk about that. I mean, we talk a lot about the Broncos pass defense, which is exceptional and as good as any, the best in the NFL, not as good as any, better than any in the NFL each of the last 2 years. They were number 28 in rushing yards allowed last year. Teams tried to run the football against Denver. Teams had success running the football against Denver. in 2016. And while we didn't see a lot of that on Monday night, it's also a short week for that Broncos defense to prepare for a pretty physical rushing game.
That's a good point. I think it's a low-scoring game. Fatigue could be a problem on the field for 56 snaps and 25 minutes of possession time against the Chargers. That's something to watch. I like Simeon. I think he's a lot like Bradford. Denver got up to a good start. They were 5-2. Kubiak blew it on that Sunday night game against Kansas City, not playing for the tie. Tried a 60-yard field goal in like 20-degree weather that came up short. But then the offensive line had a ton of injuries. Anderson got hurt. No running game to speak of. That's when all hell broke loose. So they had a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter until the turnover started. So I think there's a lot of good with the offense. The defense, they beat the Chargers, and Zach Kerr was out. And he also had Crick, who was out with a back injury. Kerr started 4 games last year. He's 335. Big fella. Important to plug inside against the run. Vance Joseph. It's good for our football team with Kerr facing the Cowboys this week. A big offensive line that runs the football. That's huge for us if he comes back. They're supposed to have him in that one. Rematch of the NFC Championship game Sunday night. They open Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Packers and the Falcons. Atlanta is 354 the total. Well, we knew there'd be a drop-off going from Shanahan to Sark. They already played an under. And they were 16-2-1 to the over last year. They had a couple of broken plays where they hit the tight end, Hooper. Other than that, they didn't do much on offense, and they're lucky they got out of there with the win, Teddy, because the Bears dropped a couple passes.
Yeah, they sure did. And let's be very, very clear about this. From Kyle Shanahan to Steve Sarkisian is a drop-off. No question. Last week, it was a pretty big drop-off. You know, we saw the broken play touchdown, as you mentioned, to Hooper, and an offense that was not in sync thereafter. Now, this is a really rare setting, okay? This is the third meeting in the last 2 years between two non-division teams, and they're all in the same city in Atlanta. Although it's the new digs, the Falcons will be debuting their new stadium on Sunday Night Football. But we'll look at the 2 meetings last year, 33-32 in the regular season. The Falcons win, don't cover as 3-point chalk, and at -6 in the playoffs, 44-21. The Packers defense had no shot against this offense, especially once they got to the postseason when they were really shorthanded in the playoffs. Look at the graphic. 2 games against the Packers. Atlanta, 77 points, 9.3 yards per pass, 7 touchdown passes, no turnovers. Ryan with a $141 QB ratings. They had no chance. So what happened in the offseason? Well, number 1, Shanahan left and Sarkisian came in. And number 2, here's Green Bay with Dom Capers, who's a pretty bright defensive coordinator. He's got a brand new defense specifically designed for offenses like this. Green Bay Packers are running the Nitro defense, a team that's, a Nitro defense that's sometimes a 4-2-5, sometimes a 3-2-6, which you never see in the NFL. But it's a situation where they want 6 defensive backs, including 3 safeties, on the field as often as possible.
I think week 2 is very difficult because you have to handicap what's real and what's phony. Green Bay played well Sunday, but it was against a terrible Seattle offensive line. Atlanta struggled against the Bears. Now they're coming at home. Is Sark against Capers a mismatch? Who knows? So it's a lot. I mean, it's like the Rams. The Rams looked great, and Goff had 300 yards, but it was against Tolzien and the Colts, who might be the worst team in the league when Tolzien plays. So are the Rams good? Was it Colts bad, or was it a little bit of both? That's tough, and I think that's what we have here with Green Bay's defense, Teddy.
Yeah, sure. But let me get this one more graphic up here because you want to see exactly what the Packers are doing with this Nitro defense in the secondary. Look, the Green Bay defense faced 49 snaps overall. And look, for like 46 of those, they've got 6 DBs on the field. And some of it was Seattle confusion. They hadn't seen this defense before. They only had 12 first downs, 225 total yards. Russell Wilson ran twice for 40 yards. All other runs produced 50. Wilson was sacked 3 times. So the question we have to ask ourselves, this is a new defense. We haven't seen it at the NFL level. Sarkisian is going to be looking at film of this defense and trying to break it down. Can he figure it out off a single week, the way that Kyle Shanahan might be able to? The other question you want to ask is, can Green Bay run the football well enough to take the crowd out of the game? Last year, Ty Montgomery, someone we highlighted on the show last week, as being the hope for the Packers running game, only 54 yards on the ground versus the Seahawks.
All right, let's keep it going. Money time, play of the day. Back to the Vikings against the Steelers. Teddy, we love Dalvin Cook. Also got lost in this. He had a huge game on the ground Monday night.
Yeah, bottom line, let's look at game number 273. Yeah, we're going to step in front of Pittsburgh at home. The Minnesota Vikings plus 5.5, the current prevailing number. Look, this is a Vikings offense that had the worst running attack in the NFL last year. Dalvin Cook has changed that already. Expect a tight affair at Heinz Field and take the Vikings plus the 5.5. That's our play of the day.
All right, very good. Remember earlier in the week we gave out Memphis. Mora is 3-11-1, 18 the last 15 non-conference. Have a good weekend. We're back Monday to recap everything on SportsBet. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com. Thanks for watching. Have a good weekend.